So today what we're going to talk about is man-in-the-cloud attacks, where hackers are now using Dropbox accounts. Instead of hijacking a website and putting in malicious code, they're actually taking a Dropbox type account, they're uploading files to the Dropbox account, and then they're sending links via email for you to click on those links. So some of the dangers with that is you have no idea who sent you the link, and you want to make sure that you're not clicking on those. We have clients that have opened up these links and it installs a ransomware file. It's an encrypted file that installs on your PC, and then it infects all of the PC files on your system as well as on the server and all of its shares. What happens then at that point is that the users throughout your network can no longer access files on the server, and thus can also infect those local machines. These infections actually encrypt the file, hence the name ransomware, and the only way to get your files back is to either pay the ransom or restore from backup. So if you don't have a good backup, you need to make sure that you do. Now, joining us is David Ruddick with Insane Technologies and Scott Beck with Beck Tech. Guys, I know that both of you have had clients that have run into this crypto wall and these ransomware viruses. What are some of the things that you've seen? Scott, have you had a client that you could tell us a little bit about their attack?
Sure. We actually had an accounting firm, Charles, that gave us a call. They weren't a client of ours, and they said, hey, we're having issues opening up some of our files, and they had reached out to their IT provider, and they weren't sure what was going on. So once we got investigating, sure enough, someone had actually clicked a link and got themselves infected with this ransomware. And it had been there for over a week, so it had dug into all of their files. End result for this client, they were a week and a half of not being able to use their data. So that was a week and a half of these accountants sitting around not being able to bill anything. And when we started off talking to them, it was like, we have a chance of getting your stuff back if your backups were working. But unfortunately, in this situation, no one had actually checked it. So it was a very long week of nail biting for these accountants, hoping that they were going to get their stuff back. And Charles, actually, at one point they said they did want to pay the ransom, even though it had been explained to them that if you pay, there's a chance that they might not send you what you need to get your files back. But they said, no, we got to do it. We got to get back up and running. And when we went in to try to guide them through that, it turned out that those servers were actually already offline. So even though this client wanted to pay a ransom, they were out of luck. They'd already been closed down. So they were kind of hit bad two ways.
Well, that's horrible. There's a sheriff's office close to Nashville, Tennessee, and they were hit with the ransomware, and they actually paid the ransom, and surprisingly, they got their data back. Now, the hackers had no idea whose data they had, because you think about the different criminals and the different information that was in that data, they were truly after the money, not the information in those files. But David, have you had clients that have run into similar situations as well?
We have. I actually had two in a week. One was just a very small bookkeeper for the film industry, which was not in any way belittling that incident. The other one was a law firm, and he was a managing partner. He got an email from the Australian Federal Police, which is kind of like your FBI, etc., for a speeding infringement. And they don't do speeding infringements, but it was the whole social engineering aspect of it. It put him into fear, so he thought, oh crap, I better open this and see. And lucky for us, we had all the systems in place to quickly roll it back and restore the data. But and this guy, both of these people, by no means are unintelligent and not computer savvy. It's just the way that they are targeting people. And anecdotally, I was chatting to one of the software vendors the other day, and they actually said to me that ransomware as a service is now a new platform. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but essentially, if I'm a cyber criminal, I can go pay a software subscription and buy a piece of software that will launch me attacks like CryptoWall, CryptoLocker. All I need to do is supply a Bitcoin wallet ID, so the account that I want the money to come into, and off I go. So, if we're now having issues where it's very easy to steal and fake the credentials for Dropbox to deliver these payloads. Where does it stop? Where do we actually draw the line and be able to protect our clients, protect businesses and the general public from these ongoing threats?
And Charles, I think David brings up a very valid point. The entrance barrier for cyber criminals is now getting lower and lower. We're seeing these attacks more often, and they're getting more sophisticated in the sense of how they pull you in, how they get you to actually click the link. They're spending a lot of time and research to make sure that these are engaging, to get you to click. And there's very little risk for these criminals when they do this, because even if it gets traced back to a country, who's going to prosecute or go after them or get them shut down? So very low risk, chance of getting caught's not high, and very profitable, and a very low entry barrier to get into becoming a cyber criminal, to be making this money.
Yeah, it's truly sad. And David also mentioned Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an internet currency that you can purchase online. You can buy using real money, and you can also earn it in different ways, and you can make trades online for it. And we had one client that had gotten the ransomware, and they said, well, we just want to pay the ransom and be done with it. And I said, well, I suggest against it. And so they started investigating on their own how they pay the ransom, and they were going to have to buy Bitcoin to pay the ransom. Well, in order to sign up for a Bitcoin an account and purchase Bitcoin, it actually wanted them to make a photocopy of their driver's license and submit that so that they could open the bank account. So red flag there of not wanting to open up that account. So we ended up being able to restore their data, and everything was good. They just lost a couple of days of productivity. So speaking of the emails, we'll show a couple of examples of those, and what to look for when you see an email, and what type of threat to look for.
So when you're looking at this message, it actually came from someone that I know, and when I look at the properties of their account, it is legitimately his email address. Now, this is supposedly a Google Docs document that he has shared with me. But when I hover over, I'm not going to click on, I just put my mouse over the top of secure message, you'll notice here that it's actually taking us to a different website. It's not taking us to Google Docs. So hover over the message and you'll see that this is not a legitimate Google Docs folder that it's trying to take me to. So the first thing I did is I emailed Joe back, and I was like, hey, did you send me this email? By the time I had sent his email, the reply to his email on this, his account actually had been disabled by his administrator.
So you definitely want to make sure that the sender is a known person, and you make sure that you could even call them or email them back saying, hey, did you send this? Because you can never be too safe when clicking on links. David, what do you tell your clients when they ask you about spyware or phishing attacks like that? I know it's happening with phones now. A lot of phones are now getting, they're calling it smishing, SMS phishing attacks, where they're sending links directly to a text message. Can you, I think you've touched a little bit on that in some previous conversations. Can you tell us a little bit about what you know on that? Or if have you had any clients that have run into, what are you educating your clients on?
Look, honestly, that's a conversation I need to have more in depth with clients at the moment, but I was there with you in Nashville when it was raised to our attention that this new MMS exploit for Android mobile phones came out, and I've been reading through other articles as well talking about certain carriers around the world that have been exploited, which may be sending out payloads to people's mobile phones to drop files on it. So it's now getting to a point where, I've turned off automatic downloading of MMS on my phone. I don't know if that's going to be enough at this point in time, but I'm certainly going to be having those conversations with clients and saying, hey, you need to turn this off unless we're safe about it. The bottom line is, if you don't know who it's from, don't open it. we were discussing just before the call the Inception framework, which is another email phishing. It's another email attack, sending something that looks like a fairly ordinary Word document with maybe a couple of pictures in it or something, which you just look at and delete and think nothing of, but in the background it's downloaded some malware to your computer.
And you don't even know that malware is being installed. That's the bad part, is it's happening in the background. So you don't even see the attack happening. You may just be visiting a website and it's downloading a payload.
And Charles, that's a good point, because by the time it's there and it's installed, it's already too late. It's already done what the negative things that it's designed to do. So you have to take your preventative measures in advance. So if you're a business, you got to make sure that you're protecting that data in a way. We like to tell our clients that at a minimum, you need to be backing up that data hourly. So if you do get encrypted, the worst case that's happening is you lost an hour's worth of work. And you got to make sure that these backups are being tested on a regular basis to make sure it's actually working. It goes back to the accountant story earlier. They had been running backups for 3 years, but they'd never ever looked at them. There was a lot of sleepless nights in that situation. So you got to make sure these backups are getting done. And as both of you guys have pointed out, don't be clicking the links. We try to tell people that email them back to make sure that it was legitimately from them, because viruses tend to try to hide themselves as to who they're actually coming from, and they try to make it look like it's someone that you know. So in my world, for myself personally, I just respond back to the email and say, hey, did you send me this, and what is it about? And if they respond back to you saying, oh yeah, that's a picture of Tommy and Joey on vacation, great, now you can go open it up. If they respond back and tell you, I didn't send you anything, now you know it was a virus.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be an email from somebody you know or even look like somebody you know. It could actually look like it's coming from a bank. I got an email a couple of weeks ago, and it was an email saying that the funds that were being sent to me via a PayPal user are being held until they can investigate my account and make sure that the funds that were being sent are going to be approved. Well, I was thinking, well, I'll check on this later. And later, when I was thinking about it, I was actually driving down the interstate, and I was thinking, I don't have a PayPal account associated to that email address. So later, I went back and I looked at the email, and sure enough, there's no misspelled words. The grammar is perfect, and all the logos, the links, everything looks exactly like email that I get from PayPal. However, when I hover over the links, all of them are pointing to somewhere other than PayPal. And what they're doing now is they're actually using PayPal in the name, but they're putting a different URL on the end of it. So it may be paypal.com, period, their domain name, period.com. And what happens is you're thinking that, well, it's got PayPal in the name, it must be legitimate. Unless it actually has the paypal.com on the end of it, it's not going to be legitimate. And the other thing that I've noticed also is they're also leaving characters out, like a letter, or they're adding two I's together or two T's. So it still looks like when you read the fictitious email account, it still looks legit. So you still have to be careful when you hover over those emails. Just know that if there's a email that you get that you question, there's probably a good reason why your brain is questioning it. So take the time, check it out, make sure you don't click on it.
And if you don't, you could be putting yourself, your family, and your business at risk.
Yes, and lots of downtime and a lot of money and IT expense to get it cleaned up.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
No one wants to end up being a statistic.
Say again?
No one wants to end up being a statistic.
That's right. You'll end up being the statistic. All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
You too.
Have a good day, David.
Yeah, David.
My Friday's looking great. Yours will too.
Have a good one.
See ya.